I want to turn now to Eylon Levy, a spokesperson for the Israeli government, who joins me here in studio. It's great to have you here.
Hello,
Thank you.
Kaitlan. Good to be here in New York.
Just first on that report from Jamana, I know we heard from the IDF, but if Israel is dropping a 2,000-pound bomb, why are civilians saying they weren't warned about that?
It is desperately sad, and it points to the inhumanity of the Hamas human shield strategy that Hamas deliberately embeds its fighters within civilian areas, because it knows that either it gains immunity for its fighters or civilians will be hurt, and Hamas wants civilians to be hurt. Because its only strategy for trying to survive this war is to generate sympathy and international pressure on Israel to stop. Now, what we heard from the Israeli military here is that our forces came under direct attack from that facility. Now, if soldiers are coming under attack, clearly there is no time to give a warning for people to evacuate, having already said that the militants, terrorists, were operating in the area. If soldiers come under immediate fire, they do have a right to strike back, and that is why we call on civilians to get out of places where Hamas is trying to use them as human shields, so that Hamas cannot do that any longer.
But if Israel knows that there are civilians there, and the survivors were saying that there were drones, that they had major white flags, I mean, doesn't that make Israel reconsider dropping a 2,000-pound bomb that kills half the members of an entire family?
The army will, of course, consider whatever specific munitions are necessary for a specific operation, and I can't comment on operational matters because I'm not a military spokesman, but we think it is deeply tragic. Deeply tragic, the war that Hamas has brought on the people of Gaza by deciding to declare this needless war on October 7 with the 10/7 attacks and deliberately fighting from inside civilian areas. And Hamas does that because it knows how it is manipulating international public opinion. It knows that if it hides under civilian areas and keeps moving with civilians as they evacuate to safer zones, it deliberately keeps them in danger. For us, every civilian casualty is a tragedy, and for Hamas, it is a strategy.
And yes,
it's a strategy we're trying to thwart.
Hamas does do that, and obviously everyone knows they're a terrorist group. We saw what they did on October 7th, but I think it also raises questions about the burden on the Israeli government and the responsibility when there are civilians there. But I want to ask you about the announcement that we got from the White House today, President Biden saying that the United States is going to orchestrate airdrops of aid into Gaza. Does Israel really think that that's the solution to the humanitarian crisis, that it's to the point where you have to airdrop aid into Gaza?
Sure. If I could just comment on what we said before. Israel is, of course, trying to uphold international law, but it's trying to do it in conditions where no army in history has ever had to deal with a terrorist group so deeply embedded within civilian areas, and that poses challenges that no military in the world has had to deal with, and Israel is having to innovate new ways to try to mitigate civilian harm.
And I think people understand that, but then it's also really difficult to watch a report where someone lost half the members of their family because of this.
It's heartbreaking. It is tragic.
It says they got no warning.
It is tragic that Hamas declared this war and is fighting this war from inside civilian areas. We didn't want this war. We didn't start this war. We didn't expect this war. We're fighting this war because Hamas retreated with 253 hostages and told us it wants to do it again and again, and it will unless it is stopped. And so we understand we have to. Now, as for the specific question of humanitarian aid, we want to see as much humanitarian aid get into Gaza to the people who need it while making sure that Hamas cannot steal it. Now, that's why we've done, on the one hand, expanded capacity at the Israeli crossings. There is now more than double the excess capacity at Israel's crossings to get more aid in. As we speak right now, there are 300 trucks worth of humanitarian aid sitting on the Gazan side of the Kerem Shalom crossing, waiting for the UN to pick it up and distribute it. The aid is getting in. The problem is that the UN is struggling to distribute that aid at the pace that Israel is facilitating its entry into Gaza.
Okay, but there's also a lot of aid on the other side of the border, where this was posted by the former humanitarian coordinator for the United Nations, who's now working for the Norwegian group here, and he was saying that that is aid that cannot get in. But I want to get to aid.
The amount of aid actually is increasing.
I want to get to aid generally and how much is getting in. But on the fact that the U.S. is now orchestrating airdrops to go into that, is that really the solution that Israel thinks is the way to get out of this, the way to help feed these starving people in Gaza?
Well, there are two questions. One is the question of aid getting into the Gaza Strip, and there is enough capacity at Israel's crossings to get in as much aid as the international community is sending.
Clearly there's not.
No, but then there's a question of how aid is being distributed inside Gaza. And we're talking about airdrops into areas that are difficult to reach because they are active war zones. because Hamas is still fighting in the northern Gaza Strip and because these are dangerous areas. And we saw what happened just the other day with those horrific scenes of the fourth convoy of the week trying to take aid into northern Gaza and being mobbed by desperate civilians who then got killed in a stampede. So one option is to airdrop aid, and there was a successful pilot this week in cooperation with, I believe, Jordan, Egypt, the UAE, France and the United States to airdrop aid into Gaza. And we're looking into other ways to deliver aid into northern Gaza and make sure, again, it gets to civilians who need it while making sure Hamas cannot steal it.
Safer, easier way to do this than just simply airdropping it in? I mean, the reason you saw that chaotic incident is people are rushing these trucks because they're starving. I mean, it's desperation in its fullest extent that you're watching. And we hear from the IDF saying, well, our forces felt that they were endangered, and that's why they fired upon the crowd after firing those warning shots. That's what the IDF maintained.
Well, they said they fired when people began to rush towards the soldiers.
But the people are rushing towards the soldiers because they have food and they're starving.
Well, I mean, that was why they were rushing towards the trucks.
And that the situation actually is not good and there's not enough aid getting in?
Oh, the situation is definitely not good. We don't downplay that Hamas has brought tragedy and disaster on the people of Gaza by declaring this war. Now, it's a unique challenge to work out how you distribute aid in an active war zone where we know that the terrorist organization Hamas is hijacking aid, that the UN agencies that are supposed to distribute aid have been covering up for Hamas, and worse than that, have been relying on Hamas protection for the ships, for the cargo. I saw just now Mr. Satterfield at the State Department saying that one of the reasons...
humanitarian aid envoy from the United States.
One of the reasons we are seeing this chaos in Gaza is that Israel has been targeting the Hamas so-called police, as if a terror organization can have police, that were securing the convoy. So here you have the international community admitting that until now the United Nations has been reliant on Hamas, a proscribed terrorist organization, to secure humanitarian aid. And that's why it's important that we have options like airdrops.
But what's the alternative there? Because, I mean, obviously that's not an ideal situation for the United States, and we've talked about this at length, but it is an undeniable fact Hamas is still in Gaza. So what is the option for the United States? What's the better way to get that aid in? Because right now, what's happening clearly is not working. Well,
airdrops are one way where we can try to circumvent Hamas and circumvent UNRWA by cutting them out of the aid distribution system. Because we've released audio examples, for example, of phone calls with people in Gaza saying, we know that UNRWA members are stealing aid. We know that it's being diverted to Hamas. And a lot of the aid that has entered the Gaza Strip, by the way, yesterday we had a near record 260 trucks going into the Gaza Strip.
How many was it before October 7th that was getting in? It was hundreds, more than that, close to 500.
And we have the capacity for 500.
So that's half the aid that is now getting in.
And we have the capacity for 500.
And they don't have their homes, they don't have bakeries, they're in tents, basically.
Well, you mentioned bakeries, for example. Inside the Gaza Strip right now, there are 20 operational bakeries. They're producing 2.5 million loaves of bread, pita breads and rolls every single day. There were 10 2 weeks ago. And thanks to coordination with the Israeli army, we have doubled the number of operational bakeries inside Gaza because it's important that aid reach the people who need it and not the Hamas terror regime that has brought such disaster on the people of Gaza. And after Hamas is brought down, I hope that the situation will improve for everyone.
I think what's clear to everyone is it's not enough aid that's getting in. There are not enough bakeries. There's not enough supplies. Eylon Levy.
Foreign states that want to send more should send more. We can facilitate its entry into Gaza.
I think that's a big question. Eylon Levy is Israeli spokesperson for the Israeli government. Thank you for joining us here on set.